and then I'm going to start the live stream.
Oh, snap. What?
All right, we are now streaming live on Facebook. All right, so I just want to welcome everybody to the American Poetry Museum's very first virtual Sunday reading. So thank you so much for being patient with us and still sticking around with us. We have a very, very dope lineup for y'all today that I am personally excited for. So I'm going to be cheering on, asking my questions, giving my snaps just as much as you all. So as you remember, or may not know, because maybe you've never been to the American Poetry Museum, you were introduced to us in this virtual space. But if you were rocking with us back when we were in person, the American Poetry Museum would always host Sunday readings. And it would be two poets going back and forth, talking to each other through poetry. And then afterwards, we would all open up a discussion and talk about that poetry or whatever ideas just came to mind. So we're back in this virtual space. And today we have Mr. Dimitri Reyes, and we also have Beyond Your Definition. Now, before we get to their poetry, I'm gonna open y'all up with a poem so that we could kind of get in the vibe of it all, you know, get in the poetry mindset. So I'm going to read a poem in honor of Puerto Rico and Hurricane Maria. So for those of you who don't know, the 3-year anniversary is this weekend, so. Borinquen la Llorona. My children run away as my sobbing soaks the ground following their steps. My pain overflows once lush greenery, so I hide by the rivers, trying to wash my tears in ripe ripples. My streams keep flowing, they don't stop. I look at the skies, clear, blue like aquamarine crystals, and in my core, waterfalls still push floods through tree lines and steep rocks. In my core, showers still drench forest floors. I search in silenced towns and tranquil campos. My children are not there. I am alone. Darkness is all I see. The brushing of my dress against closed windows and overgrown grass, the only noise I hear. I keep looking, I keep walking, I keep crying. The morning sunrise wakes fog from the ground, and even the cemetery is empty. Already lost souls gone with the bouquets that once cemented them to me, I fear my own death. Day breaks and I return to the riverbacks, hiding whimpers, waiting for my children disappeared. Arms barren and cold, I hold myself crying, where have my babies gone? Winds yell, they've crossed distant waters to escape. Gusts laugh as the downpour drops. I cry, missing my missing children, and I almost find their smiles in singing birds. I think I feel their warmth in throbbing banderos as the brisk mountain breath consumes my heart. But I'm always wrong. All right, so again, everybody, welcome to the Sunday readings. My name is Tatiana Figueroa Ramirez, and I will be your host for this Sunday afternoon. Before we get into today's reading, I do just want to shout out some upcoming events that are happening at the American Poetry Museum. So first coming up, we've got the opening of Joel Kroom's Afrofuturism, Afro-Pop in the Era of COVID. So this is going to be an interactive gallery opening. It's at the American Poetry Museum. If any of y'all have been to the American Poetry Museum, y'all know how dope of a space it is. It's very community oriented. It's all about the art. It's all about the discussion around the art and opening up more discussions around that. So if you get a chance, please feel free to stop by the American Poetry Museum safely, please, you know, wear your mask and all that. On September 26th from 1:30 to 5:30 p.m. Again, it's Joel Kroom's. He is a dope artist. If you have watched Mother Tongues, you have probably seen him before and you know how dope this man is. So please go ahead and check out his artwork if you're in the DMV. If you're not, I'm sure there will be more opportunities for you to interact with his work. We also have the Joe Ross book launch coming up. And we have another Sunday reading next weekend. Y'all are in for treats this week, I swear. So next week we got C. Thomas, very local DMV, always holding it down for us. And we've also got Natalia Reyes, all the way from California, joining us. So please, if you can, join us for any one of those events, all of those events, whatever you can. But today we're focusing on two dope artists that I have the honor of personally knowing, and I have had the honor of personally hearing them perform, and now I get to hear them perform virtually, which I'm so excited for. So we have Dimitri Reyes. This is my brother from another mother, I swear, even though my mom would probably adopt him if she could. So he's holding down Newark region all day, every day. He puts on for his community. He puts on for his folks. And on top of all that, he's a dope, dope, dope poet and dope artist. He's a dope person all around. So we're going to welcome Dimitri Reyes. And we also have Beyond Your Definition. Now, Beyond Your Definition and I, it's funny because I feel like I met her 100 years ago, because this pandemic really proves that time is just a social construct. But really, it was just last year that we met. And I think we only met once in person, because shortly after our quarantine happened, but I've had the pleasure of interacting with her in these virtual spaces. I've heard her read a few times and she always blows me away. She is so dope. She's right here local, putting on for her community as well. She is out there working. Okay, so I want y'all to show lots of love for Dimitri Reyes and Beyond Your Definition. And I'm gonna go ahead and spice it up. We're gonna have Beyond Your Definition go first. Let's hear this conversation between poetics.
Yes. Thank you so much for warming up the space. So happy to be here. So since it's Sunday, I just feel like I want to open up the space with this piece. It's called Poetry is My Religion, and I'll let it kind of speak for itself. I think I found poetry around the time my vocal cords decided to go on strike, refusing to hold up any more high notes, trying to grasp for some type of talent, because being the only youth choir reject, you get a lot of ish. And I know that sounds like a contradiction, but so was the war being waged against my spirit, mind, and soul, only to take a greater toll on this body, paying through countless nocturnal nights for rampant ideas knock on my brain's door at the most ungodly hours. And despite my great grandmother's warnings that nothing good ever happened after 3 a.m., more often than not, I found myself inviting those thoughts in. I found myself surrendering to the invasion with white flags in the form of crumpled up pages scribbled on with my thoughts bordering insanity, provoking poems, in tandem with the sound of a seashell. If you hold it up to your ear and you listen ever so softly, every time I turn pages, it's my own form or the parting of the Red Sea, as lukewarm, watered down words unthaw my soul after what felt like the coldest winter ever. I was baptized the first time my eyes made love with Maya Angelou, who were blessed enough to see Joshua Bennett's words walk on water. In that moment, hair dripping wet with homophones, I realized that their religion and my religion sounded the same, but had two completely different meanings, because you see, I began to delve into poetry deeper as prayer. And since then, I've been writing all of my thoughts into commas of congregations and sitting in pews of pauses, because I'm confessing to white pages, things that could never be held within books, only stored away for Sundays, because you can spit and write anywhere with nothing to wear but bold line button-ups and your heart on your sleeves. Yes, I've got a strong faith in poetry. Rhyming commands me to love articulation and commune with content. And Lord knows, I may not be fully convinced of theories of splitting atoms and Eves, but I'm an avid believer in material composition, which is a fancy way of saying in all these constant cycles of sins, I'll always translate all my transgressions into tempos that sound like hymnals about daylight to deity, choosing to clap on and off beat because there's not many rules here, which is why I'm content with my label as a 13th disciple, the broke starving poet, because there's not much emotion that you can collect with ties that you decorate your souls with. You can see that My rib cage becomes stanzas of sermons, and behind that is a heart murmuring with metaphors, run through with sacrificial blood, repenting for all of my constant repetition. You see, you don't get it yet. The doors of churches and temples and mosques sometimes close, but I'll always have the immaculate cross that is created when my pen combines with paper to touch my innermost thoughts. In short, I'm somewhat of a swearing saint, and to this day, I'll be serving poetry most devoutly till I ain't. Thank you, everyone. And that was Poetry is My Religion. I grew up in Southern North Carolina. Both my parents are Sunday school teachers, and the first poems I learned, I feel like, are the Book of Psalms. And I just love weaving in how influential religion has been within the African American community, and playing with that in my pieces. I want to share one more piece with you all, if that's okay. I'm excited for this poetic conversation with Dimitri. And so in the same vein of just Sunday spirituality, fellowship, and talking about my culture, when I'm not doing poetry, I'm also a huge proponent of public health, and specifically just mental health and wellness in Black and Brown communities. And a big piece of that is being able to talk about the importance of being vulnerable with family and African American communities, and talking about that depression does occur, anxiety does occur, and especially in these kind of times. So this one is actually called, just God, my Father. I wonder what kind of monsters live up under God's bed. I bet it's an abomination of a beast. Bet it's got 6 heads, but no face, only 12 teeth, all resembling the face of Judas. I bet it kisses God's dreams like sin he can't wash off. See, most believers don't know this, but my God, he's been suffering for depression for upwards of 11 years. See, I've seen his patient history hiding there in the good book you see right there. Once for 40 days and 40 nights, he tried drowning out the sound of his own voice, and he almost did too. Then half dead, half silent, he called the art on himself to save him from him. Have you ever tried to save you from you? Have you ever tried to end you by you? It's an impossibly possible thing, but with a miracle, my God won. Lost, I guess, depending on how you look at it. See, now my God goes to see his strength rainbow bi-weekly, and she makes sure in the future he can weather any storm. And on most nights, I wonder if her office is located near my earthly father's therapist. See, he's never told me he's talking to someone, but my family's afloat again, and that's proof enough to me that there must be some healing. And see, I'm thinking maybe she has them in some sort of group therapy. Like she asked these Black men, my father and my God, to talk about the triggers. They both say it had something to do when they had nothing to do with their hands all day, when no one was putting their hands together to pray. See, my father and my God are both Black men suffering from depression in a day and age when they can't talk about him. And I know that sometimes it crosses their minds like a crucifixion. See, I know sometimes heaven feels more like hell in their heads, and I'm praying for them. But I don't know if it's enough. I don't know how a man who could walk on water would sometimes try to drown in it, but I'm trying to understand them, trying to see the holes in their hands, heal the holes in their hearts, trying to understand myself, because in the good book, I flipped through it and it said, there was the word of God, and it said there was God in me. So should I be talking to someone too? Thank you, guys. And, I am just excited to share with Dimitri in this conversation, and appreciate everybody for listening. And I'm gonna mute myself now to get the poetic response that I know Dimitri's gonna send me. And thank you to everybody for joining on and getting started with us here.
Jesus, praise be with you. And I'm pretty sure everyone else is saying amen. Yo, all right, everyone, we can pack it up. This live stream is over. This was Mariah, Beyond Your Definition, homie with the locks, keeping poetry on lock. This was, wow, amazing. All right, so I wanted to respond to the Maria to Maria, Hurricane Maria, that I was trying to think of something for it. It definitely was life changing for the island and life changing for folks like me who weren't able to ever be on the island and never touched base on the island. There was some kind of like ancestral connection we still had to it when it occurred. So I did want to speak about that. But Mariah did such a lovely job of blessing the space. I also want to contribute that blessing. So I'll open up with that before I do some of my Maria poems. Mother Botanica, morph 99 cents of sliced bread into dough balls for breakfast. Saturday morning, very early, no butter, no mayo, just filled with my daily bread. Going to the Botanica on a half-empty stomach to fill yourself up on the sweat guys and the tears of me. I am no air conditioner. I am no COVID test, no disposable mask. I am heat and murmur. You are not your world, but I am not your island. I am what I bring to you, the ding at the storefront, vibrations and shakers, greeting me in the language of your grandmama's swollen feet. Come into me, son. I am her. Agua, Nile River rich. Disguise in espiritismo, the spirits of Ongo San and Alcolado. Instead of cages, my people should be coming here by the baskets. And when it is your time to see, it will be you who also comes to look for me. All right. Thank you. And also thank you to the American Poetry Museum, to Sammy, to Tati. Your love is always warm and large. I can't see who's on the Zoom, but I did see the invite. So I see a lot of my Jersey people here, coworkers, colleagues, dear friends, even people from my childhood. So I'm really glad to see that mix of folks here. And I like this virtual programming because it could bring all of us together in that way. So I actually want to open up with some mythology poems surrounding this figure, this iconography of like third generationist, kind of like Puerto Ricanist or like islander movement. This mythological icon is called Papi Pichong, and it loosely translates to father pigeon. And this is just based off of the idea of Caribbean folks and like West African folks kind of having this idolatry of what the rooster stands for, right? So like, you know, like pride, fight, vigor. So what happens when you're second, third generation, fourth generation even, and you're disconnected from the island? You have to find those other figures to hold on to and try to explain your culture. So, you know, being on the East Coast especially, or just anywhere in the world really, pigeons, the rock dove, it's just, they've expanded and kind of, in an interesting way, colonized the whole globe. And they're like one of the most downtrodden birds out there. They're like called like flying rats, right? So within that, I have a whole series of poems that speak on kind of like trying to find yourself, a reverse digging, a reverse of trying to get history in terms of like the Puerto Rican diaspora, also with the African roots, because, you know, we're all like distant relatives, right? So this one's called Papi Pichong Dances with Maria. Make her spin with your scratches. Continue to hit the congas at the front of El Coqui. Say nightshade in her hands. Say she could provide me no aid. In Jersey, Nueva York, Puerto Rico, this dancer floods cities in the threnody of her hips. Her movements in circles on hands and knees, men growing and toppling like banana trees. We don't dare to be caught in her eye, to be hostage to her gun, sweeping fear in every man's heart. Let her continue to cut the air of this dance floor with her hips in a whirlwind of movements that will leave this place ravaged. Then I'll do one more from that small series. And this one's called Papi Pichong, A Wash. He imagines when love first met him ironed in his finest campo clothes, when he still smelled like the sea and tasted of Puerto Rico, grasping his proud American beer with his electric projected hands, a pair of intoxicated children still pressing pants in his father's tailor shop, holding love's waist when her mama was upstairs wasted, where through love's eyelids now water stained and paper thin, memories come in and go in waves of New York City metro maps with their blue and red veins all over their old Manhattan, soda shops and malt shakes on 108th, where their lips shared the Antillas half an hour before love's mama got home from the first drive to leave for the second, or when mama was scorned for being scorned by island men, and love would call her La Tormenta. When mama threw shattered objects to push away love, and the crackle in her voice then is like the tired sputter in her last breaths, now marrying the spider veins of her thighs, like the broken staircases of the childhood tenement that helped them reimagine the apartment where love lived as a tinderbox of bodies stuck in an internal lining of gypsum board and drywall, turning to brush fires and becoming a bronze burning, a tiny death multiplying the arteries in the eyes, a kaleidoscope of timbers where love now looks like her mama. Sclera's red lips blue and smiling when their voices begin to blend into the sentence, every subway is underground, which makes them wish back the MTA memories that finds himself in love reliving the 108th between Amsterdam and Broadway, his reckless hands like oceans holding in the storm of an excruciating emotion of island or city, and when she isn't there, he'll roar over like he did years ago and soar and continue to look for alternate routes, returning to the streets to salvage love's last wrinkled face.
Yes, I'm over here snapping up a storm. I had to turn my video off so I didn't distract with my movements. Thank you so much for just like those beautiful pieces. And man, I gotta write some bird-oriented poems after this. I just loved how you tied that in with just family heritage. And I just think of like a dove bringing a piece of just like foliage to let you know land is there. And I'm just thinking of all these interconnections. You have me thinking about my grandmother. So I wanted to share a piece about her. And then you also went into kind of talking about love and how that shaped the love in your loved one's life has kind of impacted who they are as a person. So I wanted to share those two pieces in response. So first, this one is for my grandmother, and God rest her soul, was an incredible woman. My grandfather, my grandmother actually came to DC before they ended up settling in Virginia. And my grandfather is one of the first Black students in the graduate program at American University, and they both were able to see Martin Luther King Jr. speech on Washington, and I was actually able to go to the march just 2 weeks ago, and so I just felt like my ancestors were in the space, and I really just want to uplift this poem. My grandmother's name was Natalie Lindsay. She once marched on Washington to hear a king's speech. That's not why she's revolutionary to me. My grandmother has been collecting Black dolls as an act of resistance for upwards of 30 years. Once, when trying to acquire a Black Santa Claus, the sales clerk told her it would be 100 more for the Black doll. My grandmother looked down at her hands, then back at the clerk, and said, if there's money in this melanin, then the state of Virginia must owe me and my husband thousands of dollars of unmet pay that our white counterparts have been receiving. My grandmother walked out that day with the Black Santa Claus under her arm, and she didn't have to pay any extra. My grandmother was magical in this way. She knew the power of her hands. She taught me to sing with them. She taught me to pray, and the wrinkles used to tell stories about how they tried to erase us, but how we were still permanent, here on purpose. Came through a diaspora, came through a water that they tried to drown us in, the same water she birthed her generations through. My grandmother always told me about the power in our hue, told me that they used to not make dolls like us because they didn't think we were idols, and that's why she collected them, because she saw their value. She knew what it meant to see an object that you saw yourself reflected in. My grandmother always told me representation mattered, and because of that, she passed these dolls on to me when her hands could no longer hold themselves together and pray. And sometimes I look down at the idols to this day and I still see her. And I remember about the value of my hue, about the power in this melanin, about the folks who tried to erase us and not create anything by us or that looked like us, but took all our likeness from us. I remember the power in these dolls, how Barbie took so long to make anything that looked like me, how they tried to characterize us through the Bratz. I remember how she created everything in between, how we took up space, made our own way. My grandmother taught me how to clap my hands, pray, and sing. And sometimes I think, and these songs come to my mind, grandma's hands clapped in church on Sunday morning. Grandma's hands, they played the tambourine so well. Grandma's hands, they used to issue me a warning. They say, baby, know your blackness well. Thank you. And I also just want to again uplift all of our ancestors in this space. Every one of us is standing on the shoulders of those who have come before us. And I know during this time, I've just been reflecting so much about what we need to do to be better allies to folks who are immigrating here, to people who are trying to build their legacy, and also protecting our own legacy. So again, just want to say power to the people, to all those folks that can relate to that listening here today. I additionally want to shout out to my other community, the queer community, and this piece is just me understanding love. I have been guilty a time or two of falling in love with Black women, and I am a Black woman myself, and it's interesting when you fall in love with the mirror, because you learn a lot about how you should treat yourself, and the love that all of us are entitled to. And so that's what this piece is about. And this is called Alcoholics Anonymous. Some tips on dating the town drunk's daughter. When I left her and told her it was over, it was the first straight line I had walked in for months. You should know the things about dating the town drunk's daughter that the town will never tell you. Drink one. Her hands, hair, and skin will be as soft, black, and bitter as freshly squeezed grapes between toes from Martha's vineyard. Her lips will taste of birthday cake vodka, begging you to be drunk and merry and embrace always. And she will leave your sheets smelling of shot glass, spilling over of shame, yet trying their best to hold on to memories of nights prior. Her body will be a cold glass figure, but full of toxins, glass embedded in her heels from all the eggshells she's been forced to walk on all these years. She pretends they're glass slippers, and she's waiting on Prince Charming or the next best thing brave enough to rescue her from the town she's built out of her own, very own spine. The only thing still keeping her upright, you see, all her life she's been drowning in the water that surrounds her, from placenta to the toxins constantly filling her father's throat. Your name will become the first thing she learns to stomach. Know that when you leave her, you'll be inherently perpetuating the belief she already has that nothing can ever hold her like daddy does his drinks, not even daddy. See, cold showers and coffees can't sober her because the town drunk's daughter doesn't know she has a problem, and you don't know you become her last and only vice. See, drunks don't teach restraint very well, so all she ever knew, all she could ever hold on to was excess of emotions, excess of emotions, excess of emotions. She's begun to gulp you down before you even know you're in her grasp. And she's gonna try to cup you like a counter covered in empty beer bottles, give uplifting support, nothingness until it can be properly recycled or disposed of with the next. But you know nothing of this yet. Right now, you think she's gonna clench the cottonmouth words left unsaid in your last relationship. Getting to know her is a drinking game. You play never have I ever to figure out what she likes, breathing life into this circle of death. See, this woman, she doesn't know much beyond waiting for last call, only to be disappointed. You'll try to give her support still, and eventually you'll flip open her inhibitions like a can's tab, and pay you won't fizzle. The town drunk's daughter, she'll be hesitant to believe your promises. She's used to encountering disappointment, but you'll try to prove yourself because this is the greatest pursuit and it's anything but trivial. But you still don't know when you hit it off. Run into each other like old friends in a bar, strike up a conversation like a match. Two flaming shots, you took each other back, figured unite each other's reborn phoenixes, or maybe a fire to keep warm by while healing up for the next. You still don't know if this poem is about the last woman you loved, or how alcohol has become your latest mistress, and try as you might, you can't seem to give her up. Thank you, y'all.
Yo, bruh. Show us that book for a second. Tell me about this book. What's that book you flashing at me? Come on.
This book is called Of Mics and Pens and Gods and Other College Courses. This is actually when I used to, I'm trying to get back into my photography game, but this is, the cover is also when I used to really love photography. And this is my first book. I'm working on a second in quarantine. It's been hard, y'all.
Yes. Do it.
But,
Mariah, how many of these poems from today that you read from that collection?
I read 2 so far from this collection.
Listen, but before you brought that up, I didn't even know you were reading from a book. Homie, amazing reading. Amazing.
Thank you. So I was working on memorizing some, but got to revisit a few that I haven't seen in a while.
Yo, it's tough. I really shout out to all these performers that are memorizing and then
And,
thank you.
This memory.
Oh no. Mariah, are you there? Hold on, everyone, because I can't see Mariah. All right, I'm gonna have to leave and come back in unless if someone sees me. Tati, do you see me? Can you hear
I
me?
see you, Dimitri.
Oh, okay. All right, good. I'm not gonna come out yet.
I think hers froze because she's frozen on mine.
Oh, okay, cool. Man, it wasn't me. It's always me. Everyone on Facebook Live, it's always me. This is the first time it wasn't. So, okay. So I'm gonna wait for Mariah to turn. She can come back, and then they can come back in. I am going to read my next set, and I'm just gonna keep the the matriarchy going. Shout outs to the matriarchy. So I'm going to respond to that poem that Mariah was discussing about having these dolls, right? If anyone's familiar with those precious moment figurines, my grandmother used to collect those a lot, and they were all over the house. And I thought that they were just like, like dollar store or bargain place things, but then she started ordering them from places like Finger Hut and all this. And then when I was talking to my wife about it, it was actually a bigger thing. And I looked it up, and Precious Moments were like a whole entire series of things. And this is where that poem came from. Precious Moments. On every counter and beside the entertainment center, space is claimed by the little wings plucking at hearts, trumpets leading an unknown charge of credit cards. Boy knows heaven and its angels live in this home, and he doesn't charge them rent. Instead, he cleans the faces of angels to be closer to figuras, to steal their breath, attempting to stimulate their worth. Every Sunday, he wipes down bookshelf altars, asking the white candle for permission. When lit, boy anoints their feet to be reminded of words not often muttered. They speak in minimalism. This is their design, casting shadows on a frame's upper lip. He thinks himself into creationism, from factory to check to store to home. She will always swallow pennies like pills, counting them all in the bank account of her belly. So boy answers to these tchotchkes because angels breed more angels. Boy reimagines her prized figurine from her first communion with its beady cherubim eye, allure, circumferencing growth of a thrift store, a halogen light shining on more porcelain dust collectors, and he thought he heard one of them say, "She's made from me once," or "She is one of us." And then also Mariah started talking about the ancestors. And I have a really interesting relationship to the ancestors because I came into my Latinx identity late in life. And for a while, and I'm from Newark, New Jersey, and Newark is a crazy like political scene if you're trying to get like into the arts or politics, you know, with everyone trying to get ahead and the arts being consumed by like capitalism and gentrification and as in every like really big city hub where the arts are kind of vitalizing the community, there are other artists from different communities, and no shade on the artists, like, you know, coming in and taking a lot of those opportunities from homegrown artists that, you know, are kind of already dealt a disservice by trying to like being on the come up to come to the arts without proper resources. Um, Luckily, I fell into the arts within a time where the gentrification already started happening. And by the time I was done with my undergraduate degree, the Newark Arts Renaissance really started becoming in full swing. And there was like a bunch of private people from like West Anywhere coming in and just like privately funding programs and then putting funnels into the artist community and those programs being instilled. So I made sure I was one of those socially responsible poets from the neighborhood that are make sure that, you know, when things are being distributed or when things are being like gifted to folks or you apply for things that, you know, I'm just advocating for the other folks around me and just making sure that, you know, we get our share and we have our voice, and the voice of the Newark arts don't change. So this is like the crossroads we're in. So then with the Latinx identity, you know, I was coming to that a little later. So it was like a digging back of history. And when you're digging back into that history, like, and you're trying to even go for grants and stuff, for instance, right? Like, you gotta kind of fill into that niche. You gotta kind of fill into that market. So you gotta make sure the way that you're treading into these different things that you're not romanticizing or fetishizing, like your own political or like cultural body. So being conscious of that, I thought of this parody of who I was at the beginning of my artistic career, who I felt like I needed to be at the beginning of that career. And, you know, Martin Espada said a really good quote in one of his essays once, and it was talking about him needing to go to a school to read, like, you know, Puerto Rican literature during Hispanic Heritage Month. And they were like, "Do you have like the Latino uniform? Do you have anything that looks Latino, like a Latino shirt?" And Martin Espada was like, "Well, do you mean like a guayabera?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, that thing. So make sure you're wearing that when you come." And, you know, a guayabera is just like a farmer shirt. Folks on the island, Hibaro specifically, used those while they were farming because it was breathable, it was light, and it was quite durable. And you'll see guayabera now like in more like professional style clothing or like traditional clothings or traditional like experiences or parties and stuff. So this is a poem about that, and it's in the Papi Pichong voice also. So Papi Pichong as shops for guayaberas in a department store. How I wish my silk shirt was a guayabera, short sleeved and woven loose so the air could breathe through. How a guayabera has the power to make people wonder about limbs beneath flowy sleeves, forearms that rest on the waist of a lover that embraces family, carries boxes, the implications of hardworking biceps smuggled beneath linen. Muy macho, yes. Strong limbs with the tattoos of diaspora hemmed through pockets over my heart. How I wish the guayabera on the rack would turn any sun cup into a piña colada. shake my Tropicana carton into a mojito, instantaneously equipping it with an umbrella like the one I'd sit under wearing this particular guayabera. On the basis of customary fashion, allow me, Cotton, to humbly, publicly leave my shirt unbuttoned more than usual. The craftsmanship of the threading magically making my chest more island lush in vegetation and less of something else on a platter. How I wish the guayabera was my uniform, a shirt with its own breath. If my face is caught burning red, so be it. I want the Caribbean stamp of approval. I long to talk to the ghosts of Taínos and the motherland. I touch the shoulders to hear croaks battle cackles inside El Yunque. I run my hands down the seams to feel the howlings from machines that make these $70 copies. In the middle of the department store, I put on my guayabera to witness myself getting backhanded in the mirror by my ancestor for being swindled, purchasing the most expensive kind of farmer's clothes I know. I follow the numbered footsteps of dance charts, filling in the store of history right out of the Macy's door, just right in my new guayabera, each step counting the money I just spent. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, $70. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. On stage, you would get the full thing, you know. And the last poem I'll get, going back to Maria, and if we have time, I know time's running. I write a lot about the Newark experience, so this is in the idea of gentrification. I just wanted to do this because Mariah sung, so I'm doing it because Mariah did it. Doña Maria's real name is Cuchi Frito. Everything free in America, for a small fee in America, comfort is yours in America, wall-to-wall floors in America. She came to America wanting to put precious moments, figuras, on a shelf, which she did around the restaurant. What she really enjoyed was slinging orders of fried food to the cops, the kids, and viejitos in the neighborhood while singing boleros. Don't call her doña. She prefers casa because she doesn't serve her food but offers the taste of holidays and marriages on any given day. Maria's hair is aired out now, and it is more champú than grasa, where her English is ever clearer outside the store than it ever was on a Monday morning. With the rent higher than her 5-foot frame, she looks at me in our coats, and she walks past up on the stoops with our skateboards for her last ever 8 o'clock closing. No more dollar empanadas and soda because Doña Maria is now out of work. That's it. That's all I got. That's all I came with.
You dropped the mic on us all. I was with you in the story. I'm like, what's gonna happen next with Doña Maria?
Yo, thank you. So you know what? I mean, I guess if that ended like kind of like on a cliffhanger, I'll do one last poem, and then after that, maybe we can go to the Q&A. Unless if you want to end it, you know, we could do that too.
So we're gonna do Mariah, Beyond Your Definition, we'll read one more, and then Dimitri, you'll read one more, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Awesome.
Perfect. On just talking about gentrification, Dimitri had me kind of thinking back to some haikus that I had. And this particular haiku, I just wanted to share one short, or actually I have 2 haikus here, and then like a little bit of a longer piece. But so the haiku is called Eviction Notice. Pay no mind to those who tried to break into your skin, no home in their own. And those are those quickie poems, but the 575, love haikus. And then this is another haiku around just dwelling places. So Dimitri had kind of sparked wanting to share this as well. This is titled Shelter. His beard was a web. Ironic spiders call home a man who is homeless. And just wanted to share, I know Dimitri had talked about kind of understanding their Latinx heritage, and I kind of came about just understanding myself through writing and just really reflecting more on my Blackness, on the revolutionary struggle that my people have been going through. And I've been really just using it as a tool to heal in these turbulent times amidst a few pandemics we have going on. One major one is racism. And we also have a lot of homophobia amongst us, and just want to use this time to also say Black trans lives matter. And so this piece is really just understanding the clash of two cultures that I was a part of, my Blackness and also my queerness, and bringing those together and really being able to understand how these shared marginalized groups have a lot in common, and how intersectionality really just lives in my body and in so many of us. So this piece is actually called 5'5". From what textbooks tell me, Mahatma Gandhi stood at a mere 5'5". A rather frail looking man, he could have only been about 100 pounds soaking wet. But the peace he exuded from his palms pressed together in prayer were enough to straighten crooked views. The strength he carried in his heels was enough to weigh out the imbalance of apartheid that had held India in shackles for centuries. My brother stands at solid 6'1", more head than body. I had no idea of the wisdom he bore in his bones. His almond eyes have always possessed something well beyond his years. My mother, she called me in the smallest voice I've ever heard escape her lips. Her words did more than knock the wind out of me. They sucker punched the air from my lungs when she uttered, "What does your brother think he's trying to do? Trying to join this gay straight alliance at the school? Who does he think we are? When I refused to sign the paperwork for him to join, he stopped eating my food. Who does he think he is? Gandhi or something?" I took a moment to respond to the full of what my mother had said, and then replied with as much reverence as you can hold for a queen who's just leached out her bloodline with the dropping of her last sentence. "I'll talk to him." I've always wondered if the dial tone hit my mother more like a red flag or a cold shower, causing her to wake up from the beauty in what she intended to be an insult. Because in 2020, I'm proud to call my brother a modern day Gandhi in this world full of bigots. And I wish more people could clear the hate from their eyes, because it's sitting there like oil, blinding them to what true love really looks like. And if my brother was Gandhi, I would surely be his Bindi, his third eye, guiding him through the destruction of this world. I would warn him that society likes to break down Black men. That's why God built his bones like white columns on a temple. That's why God put all that knowledge between his temples. And to know when he's in the midst of four white walls again, when they tried to straitjacket his truth, it's just society trying to place him in yet another box. And he's always been more of a circular man to me, full of unity and life, and he's in good company, compasses, kaleidoscopes, even this earth, and they tried to flatten that too out of fear. So stand, even when others tell you you can't sit, cry out, even when they tell you you fall on deaf ears, and claim it, even when they tell you your cause is forsaken, and remember I love you even when this world forsakes you. And after some time, I realized I had never actually hung up on my mother, merely clicked over to the other line. But when Gandhi's calling me, who am I to keep him waiting? Thank you.
Damn! Oh my God! Oh my God! Tati, Sammy, you gotta link us up again when we're out in DC, because I'm gonna be hollering all over Beyond Your Definitions poems in the back.
And when I'm
for
in
real,
my C area, we have to link. I'm feeling all this energy
yes,
going forward. I could see
yes,
it happen in the background.
yes. Yo, you know what? On top of you, this is gonna be just like a cipher. I'm gonna raise you with 2 haiku, and then I'm gonna end with another poem too. So I got you. Okay.
Yes, please.
All right. So actually, one of them I'm gonna cheat. It's like a rendition of the Red Wheelbarrow poem, but then the other one's a haiku. I'll start with the haiku first. Spanglish lessons. ¿A dónde está la biblioteca? She says in broken English. All right. So now this is the Red Wheelbarrow poem. So there's like, so much depends on a blah, blah, blah. 30 minutes or less. So much depends upon a busted hoopty idle with 300,000 miles in front of my building. Okay. So for all my Nork homies on this stream here, this one is for you, and this is in dedication to Jerry Gantz, one of the founders and big people of the Nork arts movement from like the 80s all the way up to the 2000s. So, he survived our dope epidemic. He's helped a lineage of generations of different artists, and I had the chance to be like one of the last people he's been able to touch through his art. So this poem is called Detox the Ghetto, Detox the Mind. Love. Tagged on the ghetto grottos of closed stores on main avenues. It's when the doors of businesses shut that the church outside the churches restore session. Out walk the poets and artists to write our fables on the sides of buildings. A congregation sauntering after dark, showing up with hands to mark temples until printed noun. Letters on the textbooks of walls, spelling out these mythical streets. These are the lowly carpenters of mural and bodega. An index finger bent like the hugging of a trigger, pressing nozzles down to reach a different consecration. Empty vessels with the pressures of color, existing for a world on the insides of precious. How he means us, they say in each graffiti, making houses out of stories from the bottoms of $3 aluminum miracles. Spray cans, like bread, our love for each other, scripted into bubbles.
Yeah, I feel so blessed to be able to be in this space with the both of you. I've been with the both of you in separate occasions, and let me tell you, I wasn't lying, right? I told y'all it was gonna be dope. And let me tell you, in these comments on the Facebook, everybody is singing your praises. This is pure magic, love, powerful. You guys got lots of love here in the comments. So I'm glad, y'all definitely showed up just like how I knew you would. So, thank you for your poetry. Thank you for your words. I will say there are no questions right now in the Facebook, but we could talk amongst the three of us. I definitely want to start us off with one question I'm always curious about when I'm talking with other poets, and it's really about the process of it all, right? Because I feel like there's a stereotype about what a poem is, what a poet is, and how a poet should poet. And there's so much diversity amongst us all. And I've come like I talk to Malcolm friend all the time. We got to get Malcolm here at one point too. And he's like, yeah, I always listen to music and stuff. I was like, I can't listen to music while I write. So I'm just wondering, you both incorporated spirituality, prayer, music, all of these different elements into your poetry. And I'm kind of wondering, and you all have been writing for some time, right? You guys aren't new to this. So, I'm wondering, one, like, how do you feel your poetry and your process has evolved as you've gone through this journey as a poet, as a storyteller, as an advocate for your communities? And, what does that process look like? How do you arrive to these poems? How do you come to these poems? Or how do the poems arrive to you? So if y'all both want to talk about that a little bit.
Thank you so much for these like amazing questions. That that was a poem in itself. The way you phrased the question. Um, it's crazy to say, but I've been writing now. It's been like 20 years, which is wild. But I started really really young.
In the
Um,
womb.
but I feel like for me, as far as being an advocate for my community, I just know I was like a child who like had ADD and some like vision issues, so sometimes I couldn't read off paper or focus to sit down. And so it was helpful to just be able to memorize things and put those theatrics out there. And poetry just helped me to build a community to share my story. It's brought so much abundance into my life over the years. Um, my aunt was the first poet I knew, and she, I'm not kidding, guys, has made me memorize almost everything Maya Angelou has ever written, and always really used it as a way to pass down stories from my family. And so I've really tried to also teach poetry within the communities I've lived, starting in North Carolina, and just teach it as a way to utilize a self-expression for youth, and really all ages. And I also have just like used it to talk about health issues, because you know sometimes people don't want to take a pamphlet or they don't want to hear some spiel about what's going on. But when I've performed poetry at spoken word events for breast cancer or for domestic violence or what have you, sometimes they're able to receive that message in another way, and using the modality of poetry and spoken word. And even when it comes to addiction or mental health, I've seen it just be able to be a tool that people in the community are able to hear, or either utilize to heal themselves. So as far as the way it's grown for me, I think definitely I write and I edit differently than I did when I first came into the game. And when I first began, it would almost be a run-on sentence. And I'm like, done, no commas, no breath. And because of that, I've been able to build up that resiliency in my lungs. But through the years,
That's still my writing. But
knows what I'm talking about. I can tell. But through the years, I've been able to like learn. Okay, what's the purpose behind this? What's the intention I'm trying to set? Is a song going to be woven in with this? I've performed with live bands sometimes, with other poets. Sometimes we say things in synchronicity and other things separately. Is there a certain hairstyle or movement that I'm supporting when I'm doing this? And I think like, is this a written poem? Is this something that's going to have theatrics behind it? And I think I'm still even learning through us going into this virtual space. Performance has just shifted so much, because we're trying to relay things over the video camera, and even with teaching classes through video. When we're all in the space and I can't burn sage through my classroom, I just have to have everyone in their own respective studio or area where they're gonna be working on a piece that day. I think I'm just like learning to be adaptive and also just to be very intentional and just honing the craft to be better at, whether it's particular genres, like haiku, or just being familiar with different types of poems, and being very intentional and working on those areas I'm not as strong in. So I've been pushing myself to do a lot more written work, not even just throughout the pandemic, but before that, just always challenging myself and getting inspiration, of course, from students. Because I always say the teachers becomes the student becomes the teacher. It's just intuitive thing like that, and there's so much reciprocity there. So thank you, Dimitri, for sharing your art. You've definitely
thank
inspired some
you.
poems that are coming in the future. And I hope that answered the question, and I'm going to mute myself so I can hear your beautiful answer as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And your presence was gracious, and your answer was beautiful as well. I appreciate that. To kind of just like carry that, the idea of like having students and students being teachers and stuff, right? I definitely vibe that. I think one of my students are on the stream too, one of my student teachers. Shout out to Susanna for being there, and she knows that we have conversations a lot, and with my with the other poets I work with too, about the idea of writing, right? And we get scared, especially in this time of COVID. Sometimes like we feel like every time something bad happens, as the poets, we got to write about it, right? Like it's our job to record that history. And sometimes, I mean, you could do that, but you'd be a journalist, right? That'd be more of journalism. With poetry, we have to feel a little more here than we feel with here. And sometimes, the poem doesn't always happen on the page first. The poem happens a lot here and here, and we got to think about that. And that's like what I've called in the 4 stages of the writing process, the incubation stage, right? You're incubating and just kind of thinking about that creativity. And there could be a poem incubating for like months, years, and you don't even know it. It's back here in your subconscious. You don't even know what's really there. And then when that poem needs to come out, it's going to come out. So with the ideas of writing, don't rush things. Like if you want to write a poem about something, and you're writing a poem that's supposed to go here, and it goes here, that's totally okay. That doesn't mean you're not writing well. That just means you weren't ready to tackle that object or that idea. Some of the poems that I wrote about today, I mean, I was writing since I really started writing seriously, like in 2015 and 2016. And even while I'm performing, I'm changing things because it feels different, right? And then I'll make a note of that, and then I'll change it again. So like we're ever growing and we're ever changing. And you know, you can argue that poems are like math problems, right? But the difference is that there's no formula to write the poem. There's no formulaic expression to get you to write that perfect poem. It's something that you are always writing on. And to know that not all the times you're going to be in the space, in that body to write, that is fine, because when you need to write, you are going to write. There are some folks that can write strategically every day at a certain time, and there's ones that have to write sporadically. There's ones that write better in the day or at night. You just got to know yourself before you could even come to the page. And once you come to the page, you discover different things about yourself. So if we're talking about the idea of social responsibility, the social responsibility aspect didn't come until I felt like I had a voice. And what it's by voice, it doesn't mean like how the poem sounds, but once you've written enough poems, you start understanding what you're talking about. You start understanding what you know and what you feel, and you're able to express that better. So then when you're staring at like 4 or 5 poems, it's easier for you to think, okay, well, this keeps coming up in each poem. There's some work I got to do with myself here. And then that's what you end up working on. So for me, it came from a space of learning about myself. Like I said, with like the Latinx identity and like growing up in the city of Newark, I ended up latching on to those things because I wrote what I knew. And then after that, that's how I started thinking of these different ideas. And then the ancestors start coming in and you start talking about other things. So there is no one way to come at a poem. And even in this time of COVID, if it wasn't your time to write, it just wasn't your time to write. You are a multitudinal being. You have to navigate different spaces when you need to navigate them.
For sure. And that's why I love asking this question, because I love hearing what all of these other processes are, because we're all individuals, right? We're all multifaceted. We're all parts of intersectional communities. So there's going to be more than one thing influencing the way that we work, and the way that we process, and the way that we produce. I don't like using that word, but is the common knowledge and common language, I guess. Yeah, I mean, you both brought up such great points, like, like for example, the student becoming the teacher and the teacher becoming the student. And Dimitri, one of the things that you just mentioned, it reminded me of a line that I actually wrote down from Beyond Your Definition, of falling in love with a mirror. And, being able to see yourself and, find ways not only how to treat yourself better, like Mariah, you were talking about how you should truly be loved and how you should be treated, but then also, how do you need to heal? What are the things that you need to see in yourself through your poems? So it's interesting. So we are getting questions in now, so I'm going to try to go in order so I don't miss anything. The first question is a quick one. So can you tell us the names of your poetry collections and where we can find your work, where we can support you, where can we buy your stuff? So I'll just share that the poem I opened with is from my collection, Coconut Curls y Café con Leche. You could get it on my website. I'll drop that link. I'll also drop whatever links Dimitri and Beyond Your Definition go ahead and mention. That way, easy access, easy way to support. Y'all can't have any excuses for not supporting. Okay, so go ahead and share the names of, you know, where we can find your work. Where can we connect with you? How can we follow up with what you're doing?
So I'll go first because mine will be pretty quick. If you want to look at any of my work, if you go to dimitrireyespoet.com, I have all my information there. I have a YouTube channel where I teach poetry. I have interviews, and you'll see a particularly familiar face from someone in this chat room where I last interviewed. And beyond your definition, I got your number already, so you're coming on soon. So yeah, like I do a lot of teaching tips and craft techniques and just tips for like beginner writers. I feel like there's a very disparate amount of information for emerging writers on the internet, or very like archaic things available, things that are like part of the curriculum. So there's so much work out there and so many like little secret things that everyone's too stingy to tell you about until you finally ask them. So I try to provide that to folks for that. I have a Patreon community as well where you can work with me, like with poetry edits or something, or you could even just, you know, do the first tier, and then there's a poetry prompt every week. I just put a poetry prompt today about an ekphrasis, so y'all could check that out too. I got a book coming out next year. It's going to be called Every First and 15th. Thank you. It's from Digging Press. Jesse Alvarez is the one that's fronting it. They are doing amazing work there. So if you look up Instagram, Twitter, or if you just Google search Digging Press, they make awesome books, and they're a really great small press in New Jersey. So yeah, that's what I got going on. And follow me. Follow me. Just my first name, last name. You'll see me. I'm in a picture like this. You got that? If you screenshot it, or maybe, okay, so that's the picture you'll be looking for in the little widget.
Yes. um, and I'll make mine quick too. I showed a little bit of my project in the camera today, but so it's the project is called Of Mics and Pins and Gods and Other College Courses. I'll give the link so that everybody can find it. It's available on Amazon. If you got the Prime, it can be used through that. And also I post poems, prompts, and things from podcasts that I have going on and that are going to be launching soon too, on Beyond Your Definition. It's all through Instagram. And if you are particularly on Facebook, I also have things under Mariah the Poet. And that's just a Facebook page, and everything is still linked through the Instagram. So that's a great place to start. And it's Beyond Your Definition, just as you see listed on my name here. And I can't do a face, unfortunately, for the widget. It's just my logo, a microphone. But yes, I will have writing workshops, and also have a podcast with my good homegirl called White Supremacy Makes Us Sick. It's focused on public health from the Black and Brown perspective. So that'll be coming out soon. So appreciate everyone's support, and just excited to follow up also with Dimitri and check out the YouTube page. Awesome that you're sharing all these teaching tools, and just grateful for the opportunity for today.
Dope, dope, dope. So y'all already know, I already dropped a couple of links in there. I'll be dropping Beyond Your Definitions link in there as well. So make sure you follow up with that. So the next question we have is actually on that same flow of teaching and learning, right? So from Sarah, she wants to know, what are the best tips you can share for memorizing your poems?
All right, so best tips for memorizing poems. So there's a couple. I actually, I've been very skittish about memorizing poems because I know, as you can tell, I spoke about it as such a big feat, right? And when I started, actually, it wasn't really that hard. I recognize when you really commit to it. One, you're gonna want to commit to one poem, in my opinion. you know, so you don't have a couple poems bouncing off of each other. I wasn't writing at the same time I was memorizing. I've tried memorizing in the past, and I think if you're generating new work or you're working on work while you're trying to memorize something, you start inserting lines you really liked from those other poems into that other poem, and it kind of like messes up your flow. The other thing was I didn't know that I memorized like pieces of a Busta Rhymes verse until I played it the other day. And if anyone has listened to Busta Rhymes, he's a fast rapper, right? And I was like, yo, I could barely string a sentence together. So how did I do that? And I never tried it before. And I think it was just listening to it over and over again. So what I ended up doing for Detox the Ghetto, which I just basically memorized like Saturday, I was just putting it in my headphones and I was playing it while I was driving in the car, when I was at home, like when I was in the shower or brushing my teeth, I was trying to see how much I would remember. And what ends up happening, it's really weird. It almost becomes second nature. You don't even realize that you're speaking the poem, or you can't even see the poem in your mind or think about it. It just starts going. So like Mother Botanica was the first poem I memorized. And the reason I memorized that was because I read that at every reading because I loved doing that. I loved blessing the space. So after like the fifth or sixth time, I just had it down and I realized that I didn't need the paper anymore. So one, I think it's using those strategies of either like recording it and listening to yourself, not working on anything else and just trying to memorize it maybe section by section or line by line. And the last thing is just reading it often. If you read something long enough, you know, just like listening to a song, if you listen to it long enough, subconsciously you just start memorizing it.
Yeah, this is such a great question. I used to have like 10 poems memorized at a time when I was really into doing like slamming. Just because when you're doing slam poetry, sometimes you don't know what's going to be thrown at you, what topic might be used right before you perform.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah.
Props.
It was kind of nerve wracking, but you get used to it. But the biggest tip I would say is echoing what Dimitri said. I learned actually because shout out to my disabilities community, but I have like lower vision. So sometimes it's easier for me to just hear something as opposed to I would try to go to readings and read off the page something I had written, and I would be like squinting so hard and it would just throw off my performance. So it forced me to memorize almost everything. So what I would do is use the voice memos on your phone, record yourself saying it, and then play it back as Dimitri was saying in your headphones, almost like a song. And remember that you wrote these words. So really, they're going to come even more naturally to your mind's eye than say something else you've heard and you're regurgitating someone else's ideas. The second piece that really helped with that was sometimes I would take a blank sheet of paper and I would just start writing out the poem to see that if I could do that, if I could write out the poem, that would mean that I really had it well memorized. And lastly, I would say, oftentimes I will never perform a piece that's live the same way twice. It just doesn't happen in the real world, just because sometimes you'll say a particular line and an audience will go crazy for it or snap. And you may say, oh, I'm going to change up the cadence of my voice here in response to this particular audience. But the next time you do it, you may end up, singing and saying that line in a different way. So also just being comfortable with improv. And I think just my love of also comedy and improv helps so much when it comes to memorization, just because if you do drop a line or drop a word in a line, you'll get used to looping in something else that might rhyme in the moment or just going to the next line without anyone really knowing, because this is your art, right? So you get to determine how it comes together. And there's often times where, I may have forgotten one particular word or even remembered, oh, I want to add this accent in here. But another time I do the poem, I don't add the accent in. So be kind to yourself as always, and just get comfortable, honestly, with performing with a lot of different external noises and people listening that may be clapping or anything can throw you off. And so just moving through and continuing the show after that is really the major piece that's even bigger than having something memorized down to a T. Because again, this is your piece and it's live and it's breathing and living. So it has all these fluid components and can be changed.
Definitely. And
Yes.
another thing I'll add, go slow. Go slow. Because the thing is, people are going to be like, yo, they are really delivering that. But you're still trying to remember, you know? But they're going to think it's that effect. I messed up 3 times. You'll never know. Because I just slowed down. And when you slow down, you can actually make things up. But that's another part of a different question. I'm telling you all my secrets.
Dimitri's pouring his soul out to us right now.
Mm-hmm.
No, but for real though, like the whole like when I'm gonna make it quick because this isn't about me, but I definitely echo, you know, the voice memos. Beyond your definition, I'm with you on the writing it out. I used to work at a call center, so I couldn't listen while I was at the call center, so I would just like take a piece of paper and write it out, and the getting comfortable with other noise. Because I think like when we're practicing this, we're so used to like quiet and you know we know our environment and all of that. You don't expect someone to just be like yes, like in the middle of a poem where you're just gonna be like, oh hold up, like what was that next line? So definitely, you know, just being open to that and being kind to yourself. We do have some more questions that I want to make sure we get through. This one shouts out to Manasa for joining us and asking us this question. So she wants to know, have either of you wrote a piece about the pandemic or current political climate? You may have already spoke on it, but I wanted to hear how y'all's work may have been impacted by what's going on today.
Ooh, thank you for this question. It might be the homie Nas, and if it is, thank you so much for joining on. This is such a great question. For me, the pandemic of COVID mixed with the pandemic of racism has been like slapping the mess out of me. I don't know about everybody else, but it's been rough. And my place of reprieve is often just going into my writing mode, going into my healing space. But I have noticed, and even when I talk to other artists in other mediums in my community, there have been blockages at times for me that aren't typically there. I think just because sometimes I was depleted emotionally just from being inundated of different Black lives that were being taken, along with, just the mass issues around healthcare and all these things, and still being expected to perform at this high productive level when all of this is happening outside of us right now. So again, I'll echo, be kind to yourself. Writing was my self-care, and I have been able to get back into it, but I also have noticed myself going into other mediums to find that inspiration now. So I have painted in the pandemic. I've also been working on my podcasting and interviewing and creating content in that way, going back to photography. And then from that space, I'm able to work my way back into poetry. I have written a lot around the pandemic, around continuing the themes of racism, homophobia, sexism, which have always been here in this country. White supremacy has been a theme. I feel like writers, especially in the US context, for ethos of time. And so it has been coming up a lot for me. And sometimes I'll challenge myself to write about something a little bit more mundane, but I have also found it helped with me teaching writing classes. About a month and a half ago, taught my last class with the Writing Center, and I'll be teaching one the first week of October. And in those classes, I also focus on talking about what's happening currently in our climate. And while I give the prompt or the assignment to my students, I'll write as well for that class. And that kind of pushes me to at least start something. Another thing that's helped is I was actually able to share some poetry at some of the marches that were happening here in DC. And so just being able to use my art as artivism has helped me to feel like I'm doing something for my community, and just to try and help heal and do something with the pain that's been showing up for me. So that's been just a bit of it. If you're having blockages, anybody out there, it's normal. We can't be at our same productivity level, whether it's your job, you're in school, you're an artist. This is affecting us. And so I do think it's okay to just acknowledge that. and then see what you feel you have the capacity to do right now.
Yeah, beyond your definitions, like my kindred spirit, I would second all that. I would just say beyond the definitions of anything, just be kind to yourself. Like just be kind to yourself and know. See, for me, like I've written some things for COVID, and I'll actually drop a link. I'm recording a COVID performance tomorrow, and there's going to be a live, kind of a Facebook Live thing on Saturday. So if you're interested in attending that to actually see a whole entire, like, I guess, project in progress of COVID poems, definitely follow Berry Arts, because during the week they're going to give the link for the YouTube Live link. So the thing is, like, I write about the moment, right? So like in writing about just what I'm usually writing, different events will come in if they need to. So it just so happens I was writing some poems about the neighborhood, and those poems about the neighborhood were reflective of the experience that was happening with COVID. So I wasn't technically writing COVID poems. I was writing poems with COVID in them, and that's the other thing too, when people feel like they have to write towards a certain event. Like sometimes they're not going to come. Sometimes you don't feel like speaking on a certain event, and that's okay. If you are compelled to the event, like let's say if you're going to a BLM protest, you might be swooned to actually write something for that subject. Like with Hurricane Maria, like I felt compelled to write poems towards Hurricane Maria. And the first COVID poem I wrote was being in line at a grocery store, and then an older man wanting to skip the line to get inside because he couldn't stand the line, and the store owner didn't want to let him in, right? And I was like number like 16 or 17, and people started saying like, let him in, like the first person to cut the line or whatever. And there was a magic moment of unity and togetherness for us allowing, or not even allowing, just understanding that morally and ethically we should have let him go in first. And those magic moments, which we see as poets, those are the moments we needed to record. So it wasn't that the COVID was the inspiration for me to record, but it was the experience I had with an individual that wanted me to record that experience.
Yeah, I think you both touched on points that, bring me back to the idea of everybody's process is different, right? Everybody goes through this journey, these experiences in a different way. So, with what's going on, a lot of people have to write in the moment. A lot of people just do like raw journaling. A lot of people just choose to ignore it for a while, right? They need some breath, they need some space before they can, re-enter that space. So, I think you both did a great job of highlighting that, and first and foremost, be kind to yourself, right? Whenever you're going through anything in life, or you're witnessing anything or experiencing anything. So thank you to the both of you. Now we have come to our last question, and the folks want to know, what are your upcoming projects? What are y'all working on? What can we look forward to? Get us excited. What's next for y'all?
Oh man, well, I got the every 1st and 15th chapbook coming out, so that's kind of like a smaller spread of Nork poems. And that book specifically is dedicated to Jerry Gant, that artist that was influential to so many artists between the 80s and 2017. And then Papi Pichong was supposed to come out this year. It was a whole entire collection of the legacy stories and the iconography of that pigeon that I started this whole reading with. But because of COVID, I decided to push that back. Then the book thing came up. So that's a project y'all could be looking forward towards, like after that other one comes out. So I mean, with projects, just the YouTube channel, hosting workshops online, the Berry Art Center link that got dropped for Saturday. I would love for all of you to come and see that. It's going to be really dope. It's going to be outdoors, and tomorrow we're recording in front of a socially distanced audience of 100 people out in a lawn in an atrium. So it's going to be like really cool. So I definitely tell you all to check that out. It's going to be sick, and I'm sandwiched between two dance companies that are also going to be doing COVID expired work. So Really cool. And I appreciate everyone for wanting to see our work. I'm glad that we were entertaining, and I hope you felt nourished. And I really appreciate you all for sticking around.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get some way to live stream into that show, Dimitri. It sounds like it's gonna be beautiful. I love when poetry and dance can come together. It's just an amazing combination. I have a few things that are coming up too. I'm working on my next book project, and that is going to be titled "The Metamorphosis of the Black Butterfly." And it's just about how people just talk about like the caterpillar, the butterfly, but they never really talk about the time within the cocoon. And it's actually it's kind of disgusting when you think about the fact that the butterfly has to eat its way out of this like nasty cocoon, and there are months just trapped inside this darkness, not really knowing what's going to happen. And if you're going to be able to emerge from that space. So it's really just about embodying that area between before and after. And I'm also still doing a lot of poetry workshops. The next one that's coming up is going to be with the Writing Center in Silver Spring, and it's actually still allowing for registrants and everything, and it's focused on just being a global griot and understanding storytelling from different cultures and how you can bring that into your writing. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And lastly, in other mediums, got some podcasts that I've been recording episodes for. One podcast project is called Under One Conditions. It's dedicated to Black women living with chronic conditions, and it's involved me interviewing different women and talking about my own experiences, and going to be released almost like a Netflix. Just the whole series is going to drop. And again, if you want to stay tuned for these things, follow me on Instagram. I always will streamline all of my art projects there. And then the second podcast series is the one I'm doing with my homie Sunshine. She actually is a painter and visual artist, but also works in the public health space with me, and it's called White Supremacy Makes Us Sick. And it's just talking about working in public health as Black and brown folks, and just how this is really not something new, these disparities in our community, and that we need to have more inclusion in the space and to diversify and use some new ingenuity in the public health realm. So I'm definitely excited to stay tuned with everything that people have going on. Every now and again, I'll also just drop random, I love how Tatiana described it with just the furious journaling. I'll just drop a bunch of poems on my Instagram late night, drop like 10 new things. So that happened over the weekend. So if you want to check out some COVID poetry there, again, it's just Beyond Your Definition altogether on the gram. And just really appreciate everybody coming, making space. I had a wonderful time. I've been looking forward to this. And I hope everybody's taking care of themselves, and everybody be blessed.
Thank you so much to the both of y'all. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I already knew it was gonna, like, I was telling Sammy, and I told y'all when I reached out to you guys before, so I was already hyped up about it. And, you know, y'all did not disappoint. Y'all exceeded my expectations, and I've seen y'all before, but, you know, just having you guys in conversation, it was so dope. And then the discussion afterwards, you know, so insightful, so thoughtful. I really appreciate how intentional you both are with how you speak and what you speak. So I really want to thank you both for your labor, your time, your words, your love, your energy. I think this was phenomenal. I think this was great for the American Poetry Museum, and I really can't wait until we can be in a physical space together. You know, let's pray on that one. Let's work towards that. Again, it seems like folks who are watching really enjoyed themselves too. So, you know, I hope they stay connected with you and keep following up on that work, because I'm personally excited for both of your upcoming projects. You know, both of you are such dope artists and community members, and I know it's going to be phenomenal work. So with that, you know, we do end the reading and discussion with Dimitri Reyes and Beyond Your Definition. Shout out to the American Poetry Museum for creating this space and allowing us to come together in this discussion. Shout out to everybody who's watching, who asked questions, who commented, who showed love. You know, we really, really, really appreciate it. You know, I always say this virtual space does not compare to the physical space where we can actually interact and hear each other. But, you know, we really appreciate you spending this time with us. And please, please, please look out for future American Poetry Museum events. Like I said at the beginning, we've got Joel Crooms with his art exhibition opening September 26th, 1:30 to 5:30. It's going to be mad interactive. I've seen his work before. I've heard his poetry before. You really don't want to miss it if you can swing by. We also have another Sunday reading on this Sunday coming up, actually, with C. Thomas and Natalia Valles. And we also have Joe Russ's book launch coming up. So we're busy, okay? And, you know, Dimitri and Beyond Your Definition, they already told you all the stuff they got going on. So you've got things to fill your schedule with, okay? But thank you again to everybody. Thank you to y'all too.
Shout out to our incredible host as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Papi. You're amazing. Shout outs to whoever booked it. That booking was serious.
I try, y'all. No, much love to everybody. Be safe, okay?
Be blessed, everyone.
All right, let me